Dating a coworker is an experience where you have to act like enemies at work to avoid detection by your boss and other colleagues, but at home, you blend perfectly, making every day a mixture of extremes. This morning, the women at the office were gossiping about a suspected secret romance between a man from the sales department and a woman from HR. Despite their usual lack of interaction, several small clues made their relationship seem suspicious. Senior colleague Shizuno asked Tateshi for his opinion on workplace romances. Initially indifferent, Tateshi felt discouraged by the enthusiastic gossip. Meanwhile, another colleague, Maria, couldn't understand why the couple would bother hiding their relationship. Right after her comment, a gossiping colleague mentioned that for the couple in love, this secrecy acts not as a barrier, but as fuel. Hearing this made Tateshi break into a sweat. Suddenly, colleague Yui called out to him, then quickly confronted him for not accepting her invoice, leading to a small argument. Shizuno reminded them that since they started at the company together, they should get along better. Little did anyone know, Tateshi and Yui shared the same bed at night. That evening, Yui apologized to Tateshi for shouting at him during the day, explaining her uncertainty about how to act around him since their relationship was new. Tateshi, understanding her perspective, bore with the situation. Over 6 years, Tateshi and Yui appeared as adversaries at work, yet they harbored special feelings for each other. After careful probing and discreet maneuvering, they officially became a couple, albeit secretly. Yui insisted on treating Tateshi poorly in public to keep their relationship under wraps, even avoiding eye contact in the hallway and meeting 3 stations away from work. Their days off were spent only at home, not daring to date outside. Tateshi felt overwhelmed by these demands, questioning whether this could even be called a relationship. However, he found Yui incredibly charming, which made it difficult to stay away at work. Yui then suggested using masks to go out, which Tateshi found endearing. They decided to keep their relationship private to avoid gossip and potential negative impacts on their careers, as neither wanted to be viewed differently at work. One busy day at the company, where Tateshi worked in finance and Yui in planning on different floors, they struggled to find time to meet. Yui seized an opportunity to deliver documents to finance, but her frequent visits made colleagues uncomfortable, leading to a decision by rock, paper, scissors. Disappointed, Yui messaged Tateshi and went home. The next morning, rushing to deliver files, Tateshi felt drained until he saw Yui in the elevator, instantly lifting his spirits. Unfortunately, the elevator was too crowded to talk, but Shizuno started a conversation with Yui about her recent successful project for their department head. Shizuno praised Yui and subtly prompted Tateshi to join in, aiming to strengthen their rapport. As Tateshi began to speak, Yui sarcastically responded, but this allowed them to start a conversation. Tateshi noticed Yui's ears turning red and thought to himself that such obvious signs could expose them. However, Shizuno didn't suspect anything and felt reassured seeing their apparent good relationship. Shizuno then assumed a senior role, advising them to maintain harmony and friendship. During this, Tateshi and Yui avoided eye contact, but as the elevator became crowded, they ended up at the back, seizing the chance to speak, and even secretly held hands. A few days later, after a busy period, Tateshi and Yui planned a date far from the office at a distant cinema. Having dated for nearly a month, they still addressed each other by their surnames. Yui felt it was time to use first names, and they agreed to do so on their date. Upon meeting, Tateshi was instantly charmed by Yui's new hairstyle and complimented it, calling her by her first name, which made her shy. When Tateshi asked which movie she wanted to see, Yui also called him by his first name, turning the situation flirtatious. They chose a horror movie, and during a scary moment, Yui instinctively grabbed Tateshi's hand, who comforted her in return. After the movie, they discussed where to eat, but unexpectedly ran into a former senior, Seiya, who was a trainer for new recruits, and Yui's university senior, making them close. Yui invited Seiya to join them for dinner, not planning to reveal her relationship with Tateshi. While Yui and Seiya chatted happily, Tateshi felt jealous, remembering rumors of their past club membership in college. Seiya inquired about Tateshi's work, and Tateshi responded briefly, asking why Seiya was there. Seiya explained he was on a business trip from a branch office and had missed a movie showing. Tateshi and Yui were relieved and subtly hid their recent movie outing. Tateshi felt there was no need to hide this from Seiya, who was rarely around. As Seiya and Yui resumed their conversation, Tateshi almost revealed his relationship with Yui out of jealousy, but Yui firmly stopped him. After the meal and parting with Seiya, Tateshi finally addressed the ease with which Yui called Seiya, but hesitated with his own name. Though not genuinely upset, as Yui's anxious explanation was too endearing, Tateshi kissed her, though he felt it inappropriate in public. They hurried home and were intimate, with Tateshi encouraging Yui to call him by his name, leaving her blushing the next morning. They headed to the train station together, and although Tateshi wanted to take the same train, Yui insisted on the next one. Ironically, Tateshi ended up meeting a colleague, Maria, who recently moved nearby. Luckily, Yui wasn't with him, keeping their secret safe for another day. Today, Tateshi and Yui unexpectedly bumped into each other outside the train station. They had a rule to go to work separately in the morning, so what were they to do? Ignoring each other seemed too awkward, and both felt lucky about the chance meeting. Finally, they decided to walk to the office together, playfully teasing each other along the way. To make up for the morning's awkwardness, they arranged a date at a pub in the evening. Yui has recently been busy planning a new product design. It's the first dessert she has designed, and she hit a roadblock, unable to decide between two proposals. A colleague suggested she seek help from someone in the finance department. Mentioning that word about her dilemma had already spread. Yui instantly broke into a sweat, thinking her relationship with Tateshi had been discovered. Thankfully, the colleague meant a different person from finance. Yui took the proposals upstairs and happened upon Tateshi helping to move items. She didn't greet her boyfriend but found Maria and asked her to taste test 2 snacks. Maria's advice turned out to be very professional and reliable, as she is a highly popular dessert critic. Hearing this, Maria also began to sweat and pleaded with Yui not to spread the word, although it wasn't against company policy. It would be too embarrassing as her serious and boring female colleague persona on social platforms was quite different, where she fully embraced her youthful spirit. Yui sympathized and promised to keep it a secret, reminding her colleagues in planning as well. Maria realized that Yui was actually quite nice. Seeing she was only harsh with Tateshi, it was understandable, and the two of them casually started discussing their views on Tateshi. Although not on the same page, Maria mentioned that Tateshi often stared at his phone smiling during lunch. Yui was about to agree when she realized it was because he was responding to her messages. Despite Tateshi's flaws, Maria thought well of him as he always prioritized helping others, a sentiment deeply felt by Yui, who had fallen for him because of this trait. As they chatted, Maria complained about Tateshi's overeagerness, which made her and team leader Shizuno increasingly reliant on him. Yui, getting worked up, rattled off her complaints about Tateshi, which puzzled Maria, who quickly clarified she wasn't that interested in Tateshi. Yui snapped back to reality, relieved that her junior was a bit clueless and hadn't caught on. That evening, Yui went to Tateshi's house, gave him a massage after his bath, and talked about consulting Maria about the new product. However, she didn't mention Maria being a secret dessert critic. Tateshi wondered why his wife was so considerate today. Yui said it was because she saw him doing physical work and had wanted to give him a massage right away, but waited until now. Of course, it would soon be Tateshi's turn to massage her. Little did Tateshi know, it wasn't just going to be a simple massage session for him. Later, Yui improved the sample based on Maria's advice and distributed it among colleagues for feedback. Somei, a new colleague in planning who was somewhat inarticulate, seemed to be facing some issues. After handing him the snack, Yui helped him with his work. Meanwhile, Tateshi was being reprimanded by his boss for including too many items in a document. He explained that he had listed unpaid accounts for easy reference but was criticized for being careless. Frustrated, he returned to his desk, comforted by his colleagues but still felt uneasy. He went to buy a box of drinks and coincidentally met 2 colleagues, just as Yui was distributing snacks. Yui noticed Tateshi was in a bad mood, so she handed out snacks to the colleagues around him for a taste test. Everyone mostly praised them, and when it was Tateshi's turn, his compliment made Yui angry, thinking he was just placating her. She demanded his honest opinion. Tateshi then commented that the chocolate melted too easily and was sticky, and that its large size lacked flavor variation. Yui had a light bulb moment. The other 2 male colleagues remarked it was no wonder their relationship was strained, but Yui was grateful for Tateshi's feedback and thanked him with a smile before rushing back to address the issue. Seeing his girlfriend so proactive, Tateshi also recovered from his slump, straightened his tie, and returned to work. Today, Shizuno pulled out 2 vouchers and invited Tateshi and others for drinks. Unexpectedly, they ran into Yui and her colleagues, who were having a celebration party. The 2 groups ended up sitting together. Yui remained quiet, just drinking continuously, while her 2 colleagues focused their attention on Tateshi and even called Somei to join them. Somei, who prefers solitude, was reluctantly pulled over, but chose to drink juice instead. He stepped aside to take a phone call, and a female colleague explained to Tateshi that Somei was a recent transfer and had always been somewhat of an outsider. Yui, knowing how hard it is to be new, often spoke to him, which gradually made Somei more willing to participate in social activities like drinking sessions. Tateshi suddenly felt a sense of crisis when he heard Yui's colleagues praising her. He felt proud since she was the star of the celebration. But after several beers, Yui staggered to the side looking unwell. Tateshi quickly followed her and found her squatting alone, looking miserable. He comforted her and massaged her back. Yui took this moment alone to vent to Tateshi about the unexpected overlap with their celebration. Shizuno, the team leader, had been urging her to cherish the connections with her batchmates, constantly talking about Tateshi. As they spoke, Yui began to act coquettishly with Tateshi. Just then, Somei unexpectedly opened the door, exposing their secret relationship and overhearing their conversation. Tateshi was stunned, unable to think. Somei awkwardly asked if they were hiding their relationship from everyone. With no other choice, Tateshi admitted it. The next day, Tateshi and Yui, wearing masks, met in a restaurant to discuss keeping their relationship a secret. Yui joked about silencing anyone who knew, which scared Tateshi. He reassured her that Somei didn't seem the type to gossip, but they worried about accidental slips. Yui didn't want Tateshi's reputation among colleagues to suffer because of her, unaware that Tateshi felt the same way. He comforted her by saying they hadn't done anything wrong and should just act normally. At work, everything seemed normal, and Tateshi's report was even approved by the manager. During a break, Tateshi cornered Somei and bluntly asked him not to share what happened the previous day. Somei realized he had stumbled upon a secret significant enough to warrant a special request for silence. He didn't understand why Tateshi and Yui felt the need to hide their relationship since the company didn't prohibit dating. He pointed out that gossipers would gossip regardless. Tateshi had once thought the same, but Yui had made him see that they were colleagues before they were lovers. Both valued their professional images and didn't want to mix work with their personal lives, although the secret was out now. Tateshi apologized for involving Somei in this situation. Somei responded half-jokingly that it was indeed tricky, especially if they ended up not marrying. Then things could become really awkward at work. He wasn't planning to tell anyone anyway, especially since Yui often looked out for him. He was just surprised to see such a capable senior behave so differently in private. Tateshi, spurred by Somei's comments, began to daydream about marrying Yui. Yui's planning department had a small meeting, which led to a disagreement about the design style. Yui preferred a fashionable style, but the higher-ups wanted a classic style. The team leader decided to resolve this by voting. Somei supported the classic style, and unexpectedly, Yui quickly changed her opinion since Somei knew a secret about her. That evening, Yui left work early and went home. The food had gone cold by the time Tateshi returned, but he brought her favorite donuts. While Yui was making tea, Tateshi looked around the room, noticing more cute dolls and especially more rabbit dolls than last time. These were Yui's favorite rabbit tarot dolls, contrasting sharply with Tateshi's more austere room. It made him quite restless. When Yui came over with the tea, she couldn't wait to try a maple-flavored donut and was instantly captivated by the taste. Seeing Yui so happy, Tateshi also felt a surge of happiness. Yui's department was responsible for dessert-related projects, so colleagues often recommended new sweets, making her increasingly fond of desserts. Tateshi wasn't particularly interested in these treats, but found himself growing to like what Yui liked as he learned more about her preferences. Thinking that buying these would make Yui happy, he also started paying attention. His straightforward answer made Yui's heart flutter, leading her to kiss him on the lips before running back to the kitchen to make coffee. Despite being like an old married couple, they were still shy around each other, and their affection continued to grow. They chatted over tea and snacks, and Yui talked about her meeting experience, still feeling nervous around Somei. Tateshi, recalling what Somei had told him, comforted Yui, assuring her that Somei wouldn't spill the beans. However, Yui couldn't help but grow more concerned about Somei. When colleagues discussed donuts at the meeting, she remembered her recent cravings and mentioned they were brought by a friend, quickly amending that it was just an acquaintance. Her over-explanation only made Somei more speechless. Seizing a moment alone, Somei brought up the topic, asking Yui if he was really that untrustworthy. Yui, sweating profusely, realized she had been overreacting. She had resolved to balance work and romance, yet it was impacting her job. She slapped her face to snap out of it and explained to Somei that it wasn't a lack of trust, but just her being shaken by the new situation. Somei found it funny, yet advised her that being so obvious could easily give her away. Yui took this advice to heart. Meanwhile, Tateshi was sent by the team leader to find something in the storage room. Just as he finished, he heard a loud thump from another room. Upon checking, he found Yui had tripped while organizing files, also sent by her boss to spend more time together. Tateshi naturally stayed to help, and soon the atmosphere between them became sticky. Fortunately, no one else was there, and the warehouse was rarely visited. Yui, needing to organize the upper shelves, blushed and asked Tateshi to hold the ladder. Initially, he acted normal, but a glance upwards revealed more than he should see. Thankfully, it was him holding the ladder, so he suggested it might be safer if he went up instead. The argument led to Yui accidentally falling, and Tateshi quickly caught her. This close contact made them clingy again. They verbally insisted on separating since they were at work, but their bodies were honest, and they kissed involuntarily. Just then, Yui's colleagues came to help, scaring them into a corner. The colleagues couldn't find them and kept calling out, increasing Tateshi and Yui's tension. The awkward position was difficult to maintain. Tateshi was trying not to get too close to Yui while being careful not to knock over a sign behind him. Noting his trembling arms, Yui told him it was okay to get closer. Tateshi then embraced her fully, and eventually, their colleagues left, and they breathed a sigh of relief, having narrowly escaped the crisis. A few days later, Shizuno, the team leader, invited her colleagues to watch a night baseball game. She had received many tickets and invited not only her own department, but also friendly colleagues from the planning department, including Yui and Somei. Tateshi was thrilled to watch the game with his girlfriend. Although they came as a group, Yui didn't understand baseball, so Tateshi patiently explained it to her. They even high-fived excitedly during exciting moments. Luckily, everyone else was also excited and didn't pay attention to their interactions. At one point, they went out together to buy snacks. Yui didn't know much about baseball, but had noticed Tateshi's interest and wanted to learn more during this opportunity. While they were out, a passerby accidentally bumped into Yui, so they decided to hold hands on the way back to avoid getting separated. Just as they returned, they heard a home run, and Tateshi excitedly hugged Yui, which Shizuno saw. Fortunately, the team leader didn't mind at all. Thus, they grew bolder, and Yui even quietly suggested to Tateshi that next time they could come to watch the game just by themselves. Yui's first dessert product finally launched. She eagerly watched at the supermarket from early morning, but not a single item sold. Meanwhile, Shizuno arrived early at a cafe near the office. After greeting a colleague by chance, she found herself having to share a table with a junior coworker, Somei, due to the busy cafe. Shizuno, sweating profusely, tried to make conversation to avoid awkwardness, but Somei was not talkative, making the atmosphere even more uncomfortable. Shizuno felt like she was unnecessarily overexerting herself. Somei then mentioned that since they were sharing a table, there was no need for forced conversation, as he preferred to be alone in cafes. Shizuno, feeling the same, was relieved to drop the unnecessary socializing. When Somei left, he told Shizuno that he enjoyed their chat and his perception of her had changed since they last watched a baseball game together, where she had been overly enthusiastic. This left Shizuno truly sweating. On the other hand, Yui ran into Tateshi, who was also keeping an eye on his girlfriend's product. Seeing her upset, he guessed what had happened. Yui spent the launch week constantly refreshing the product's review section, but there were no comments, despite Maria promoting it on social media and confirming the taste was good. At the office, her boss praised another team's project for selling well, increasing Yui's pressure. Her own project started from scratch, unlike the successful existing product line. Frustrated, Yui vented while working, and was startled by So-mei, who was sent by the manager to record data with her. This was the kind of busy work that kept her from focusing on her own projects, and now the manager seemed uninvolved. A colleague then brought a dessert plate for Yui to try, which only irritated her further, showing an uncharacteristically sharp side to others for the first time. That evening, she visited Tateshi's house, still downcast, and vented all her frustrations about the unfair work distribution and lack of time for promotional planning. Her colleagues discussed other snacks, showing no interest in her project. Despite her efforts, no one was buying her product. Yui broke down crying. Tateshi reassured her, noting that in his finance department, many complained about not being recognized despite their hard work. He had been yelled at over budget issues, but unlike them, he saw all of Yui's efforts. Encouraged by Tateshi to express her feelings openly, Yui brought breakfast for her colleagues the next day as an apology. Coincidentally, she saw a high school student buying her product, instantly lifting her spirits. During lunch at the office, Yui overheard some colleagues from another department discussing Tateshi from the finance department. They mentioned many of his strengths, and Yui silently agreed in her mind. However, as she listened more, she felt something was off. It seemed like they might have a romantic interest in her boyfriend. Sure enough, someone soon asked if Tateshi had a girlfriend. Yui immediately felt threatened, realizing for the first time how popular Tateshi was. Gentle, reliable, good-looking, and tall. No wonder he was admired. Yui's two close friends also heard the conversation and started praising Tateshi too. Yui looked back and saw that the women discussing him were all attractive. She then looked at her own outfit. Her busy work schedule had left no time for dressing up, and she and Tateshi had already settled into a comfortable, old married couple routine, no longer focusing on appearances. That evening, Yui dressed up specially before going to Tateshi's place. She flirted with him, blushing as she hinted at the sexy lingerie she wore and teasingly asked if he wanted to see. Tateshi was tempted but declined, noticing her uneasy expression. He wanted to address her worries first. Yui shared her feelings about the day's events. Tateshi found her jealousy cute, but reassured her that to others it was just polite workplace conversation. Tateshi didn't tell Yui, but he was accustomed to such situations, having silently felt jealous many times himself. He assured her that she was the only one in his heart. His devotion made Yui so touched that she immediately stripped down, revealing the lingerie she had mentioned. They then passionately made love for what felt like 300 rounds. Was this what adult relationships were like? Tateshi found his girlfriend exceptionally passionate that night, feeling nearly drained by her enthusiasm. They soon switched positions and started another round. The next day, Yui was visibly tired at work. In the elevator, she ran into the same colleagues who had praised Tateshi. They were still talking about him. With much more composure than the day before, Yui listened as they greeted Tateshi when he also entered the elevator. They asked about his weekend plans, and Tateshi took this chance to clarify he was not single, saying he loved spending leisurely days with his girlfriend. After the group left, Yui's friends immediately gossiped with her, surprised that Tateshi had a girlfriend. Yui, now beaming, attributed it all to him being such a good person. The Obon festival is approaching, and so is the company's summer break. Shizuno asked everyone about their holiday plans. Tateshi remembered a recent intense argument he had with Yui about their vacation destination. They had been discussing where to go for over a month. Tateshi wanted to go to Hokkaido, while Yui preferred Occurrence. They ended up arguing loudly at the travel agency. Despite the hot weather, Yui wanted to see the ocean and wear a swimsuit. Although Tateshi felt it was a pity not to see Yui in her swimsuit, he still preferred to go to Hokkaido to relax in an outdoor hot spring. He wanted a leisurely holiday without much planning. Yui thought this was a waste of their first solo trip opportunity. They were at an impasse. One packed the itinerary, the other wanted relaxation. Eventually, Tateshi compromised first, saying they could go where she wanted. However, his comment triggered Yui, who then suggested not going at all since he seemed uninterested. Yui wanted to hear what Tateshi really wanted to do, not just practicalities. At this point, Tateshi confessed, "I just want to enjoy our time together in a private bathhouse." Yui realized Tateshi was still focused on romance. His honesty made her feel better, as their ultimate goal was to enjoy the holiday together. They both compromised, and Yui playfully suggested they start the night with a bath together. While bathing, they continued discussing destinations and decided on Yamanashi after Yui mentioned a good inn there, which coincidentally was near Tateshi's hometown. Tomorrow is the first day of the holiday. Yui finished her work before leaving, eager to go home and pack. Tateshi, who left work earlier, was already home. Just as Yui was about to reply to his message, she received an urgent task. In her haste, she sent Tateshi an unclear message. The planning department's products had not arrived at the pre-sale event venue. With only 3 people left in the department and the rest busy at the venue, the manager had to deliver the products himself. The remaining staff had to manually sleeve promotional materials on each product. It was already 8 p.m., and it looked like they wouldn't finish until the next day. Yui's considerate colleagues knew she was supposed to be on vacation, but Yui couldn't leave them to handle it alone. She was determined to finish everything that day. Just then, the other colleagues returned to help, and together they worked until midnight. Yui even caught the last train home where Tateshi was waiting. He had been worried after receiving the unclear message and not hearing back from her. After Yui explained the situation, Tateshi was relieved and reminded her not to forget they were leaving together the next day. Many colleagues at the company are on vacation, but Shizuno has chosen to take her holiday in the autumn when it's less crowded and more relaxed. Surprisingly, Somei had the same idea. Now, they both often find themselves at the same coffee shop enjoying some quiet time together before work. Meanwhile, Tateshi and Yui have arrived in Yamanashi. They started their trip at a popular shop, trying the famous water mochi. Although Tateshi is a local, he rarely visits this part of town and had never tried this mochi before. Yui affectionately wiped away the soybean flour from his lips, which a child caught them doing. Yui openly linked arms with Tateshi, declaring they were a couple. This caught the attention of a TV crew who wanted to interview them, but Yui, worried about being seen by colleagues, quickly declined and they fled the scene. They then passed a large sunflower field. To Tateshi, his girlfriend was more beautiful than any flower, leading him to kiss her spontaneously. In the evening, they enjoyed a luxurious hot spring bath and reminisced about a company training retreat years ago. They were the only ones who hadn't overslept, chatting and drinking under the moonlight, helping each other pack up. Back then, they were rivals. But that night, Yui opened up and warmed up to Tateshi, and he fell for her. A sudden confession from Yui led to a passionate night in their hotel room, and they didn't want the night to end. They stayed in bed until the sun was well up, with Yui playfully climbing on top of Tateshi, wanting more. Unfortunately, they were interrupted by room service, bringing their morning together to an abrupt end. After breakfast, they visited more attractions and bought many local specialties. Tateshi, being a local, knew the best places. On their way back, they stopped by a grape stand. Tateshi was surprised, as his family also grew grapes, but he doubted they would be selling them there. Since it was grape harvest season, he didn't plan to visit his family and add to the chaos. They bought some grapes, and Tateshi, an experienced grape grower, advised Yui that the fruits at the top are sweeter from longer sun exposure. Yui tried one and agreed, but Tateshi claimed his family's grapes were even sweeter. With great food and beautiful scenery, Yui grew to love the place and hoped to return with Tateshi, maybe even to try his family's sweeter grapes. Tateshi naturally agreed. On the third day, Tateshi and Yui woke up early, before breakfast was available. They considered indulging further but decided to take a bath and plan for the latter half of the year instead. Yui wanted to start a new project, while Tateshi aimed to obtain his first-class driver's license. They made a pact. Whoever achieves their goal by next year would return to this place to stay, and the one who doesn't would pay for the accommodation in full. This motivated Tateshi as well. Back at the office after the holiday, Maria, who had also just returned from traveling, brought back souvenirs for everyone. After distributing them, she went to find Yui, as they had become close colleagues. Tateshi was nervous because he had told his department he was visiting his hometown, but Yui was unaware of this. He worried she might inadvertently reveal too much. Indeed, Maria brought back a lot of souvenirs from Yamanashi, given by Yui, famous sweets from the region. Luckily, everyone seemed to think little of it, and Tateshi managed to divert attention away. As time passed, both lovers found their own projects challenging. Yui decided to start over from the marketing section and also investigated issues with a previous chocolate cake project. The sales of her first dessert were disappointing, but this only fueled her determination. They continued to encourage each other to move forward. After organizing her materials and ideas, Yui presented them to her manager. Although there were still many issues, the manager felt the overall direction was correct. Upon returning, she heard that a colleague, also new to product development, had achieved great success and was even recommended to enter a competition. Yui felt a bit defeated, but reminded herself to be patient. She then attended a meeting with the new business development department, led by the dynamic Shaylin, a former star of the sales department who had founded this new division. Shaylin's approach was radically different from their own departments, emphasizing the urgency of seizing opportunities without getting bogged down in processes. His words struck a chord with Yui, and he took notice of her. When the manager stepped away, Shaylin offered Yui a position in his department, praising her chocolate cake project. His division was eager for innovative thinkers like her. Impressed by such high regard, Yui felt tempted. That evening, she and Tateshi visited the department store brand managed by Shaylin's division. It was bustling with customers, even late at night, showing its popularity. They bought some snacks and returned home. Yui was torn. She admired Shaylin's forward-thinking approach, feeling as though the path she had always believed in was crumbling. The potential of the new department was undeniable, but she questioned whether it was right to leave her current role without having achieved significant success. The more she discussed, the more conflicted she felt. Tateshi comforted her, urging her to listen to her own desires without worrying about others' opinions, reassuring her of his unwavering support. However, Yui was becoming increasingly unhappy in her current department. Her talented colleague had already decided to enter a competition with their project, while Yui's proposal, recently shown to the manager, was still being revised. Even if she wanted to compete, the manager would prioritize the team, as she was fully assigned to that group. Amidst this, Yui received an email from Minister Shaylin containing materials from a recent seminar, which she quickly realized were very educational. Just then, she was called by her manager because she had made a careless mistake over the last few days that almost halted their work. Thankfully, it didn't cause significant damage. The manager didn't scold her harshly, but reminded her to prioritize the team, even with her own projects. After leaving the manager's office, everyone comforted Yui, who then reflected on whether being noticed by someone as impressive as Shaylin had made her overly proud. She felt foolish for not managing to do anything right. That evening, she sought comfort from Tateshi, who guessed she was upset about work. After comforting her, he waited for her to open up, and then he reassured her that she was already seriously considering and striving forward. Returning from Tateshi's place, Yui felt much lighter and prepared to continue working from home, knowing she could always turn to him. The next day, Yui ran into Minister Shaylin at the office, who asked how she was doing, and noticed the new project proposal for next spring in her hands, asking if she planned to compete. Yui admitted she had accidentally missed the preliminary selection deadline, but Shaylin thought it wasn't a big deal, and suggested submitting it anyway, as there might be some flexibility. Unable to argue with him, Yui fled, then went to her manager to request her project be considered for the competition. The manager expressed concern about her ability to manage team responsibilities, but Yui assured she could handle both and bravely shared her true desire to focus on her own project rather than the team's. To her surprise, the manager agreed, accepted her proposal, and even planned to adjust the workload, acknowledging that the previous allocation was heavy, because Yui was always willing to take on tasks. Relieved by this conversation, Yui felt much lighter. She then met with Minister Shaylin again to inform him of her decision to decline the transfer invitation. She wanted to stay in the planning department to succeed with her own snack projects before leaving. Yet she hoped Shaylin would allow her to attend seminars in the new business development department. A bold request, but her initiative and dedication impressed him. Shaylin agreed she could start attending the seminars next time. Elated by the developments, Yui celebrated by going to a sauna with Tateshi, where they both relaxed and rejuvenated. Tateshi and Yui had planned a date today, but Yui had to work an extra hour at the last minute. Tateshi went to a pub alone to pass the time, enjoying some solitude. There, he watched a mountain climbing feature on the pub's TV and thought about inviting Yui to go hiking. Soon, he found himself missing his wife, despite planning to enjoy some alone time. While musing, he overheard an uncle at the next table complaining about his wife, which made Tateshi worry if he and Yui would end up the same way as they grew older. However, Just thinking of Yui calling him husband while wearing an apron made his heart flutter, unable to imagine ever being discontent with her. When the uncle received a call from his wife, he quickly said goodbye to his colleagues who teased him for being henpecked. Tateshi reflected, "Isn't that just like me?" After waiting an hour, Tateshi finally met Yui, who immediately noticed the smell of alcohol on him. Yui was displeased, having looked forward to enjoying their first drink of the evening together after her hard work. Tateshi quickly apologized and offered to treat her to dinner, intending to fill her up completely. Passing a shop window, he noticed the Christmas decorations and realized that they had been dating for 6 months. On the train home, Tateshi heard 2 girls discussing the anniversary gifts their boyfriends had given them, which inspired him to surprise Yui. Their half-year anniversary was next Friday, with Christmas also approaching. He began to think about what gift to give and looked forward to seeing Yui's reaction, which made him secretly smile, confusing his coworkers. Ultimately, Tateshi decided to buy jewelry because he wanted to surprise Yui and had been secretly searching for ideas. Suddenly, Yui invited him to a dessert event on Saturday, but Tateshi had planned to buy the gift that day. He made up an excuse about staying home to study for his driving test. On Saturday, Tateshi eagerly went to the jewelry store and told the clerk he was looking for an anniversary gift for his girlfriend. The clerk suggested buying matching jewelry and energetically helped Tateshi choose the right piece. Tateshi picked a pair of matching rings, and the store offered free engraving. Although he felt embarrassed, he thought, why not engrave them since it's free? He didn't know Yui's ring size, so he planned to secretly measure it later and call the clerk to confirm. As he prepared to head home, elated, he was unexpectedly spotted by Yui and a colleague. Yui didn't confront him about not being at home studying, but took another path with her colleague. Meanwhile, Tateshi imagined their anniversary date, planning to book a restaurant with a night view. After a satisfying meal, he would present the gift, expecting Yui to be thrilled, perhaps even enough to marry him on the spot. To create such a memorable anniversary, Tateshi went to Yui's house that evening to find an opportunity to measure her ring size with a red thread. When Yui asked how his studying was going, he claimed he had spent the whole previous day studying at home. Before Yui could expose his lie, he abruptly changed the subject and urged her to go to sleep. Tateshi waited for Yui to fall asleep to secretly take her measurements, not knowing that a doubtful Yui was wide awake. The next workday, Tateshi couldn't focus on his job, as he was preoccupied with plans for their anniversary date. Yui, on the other hand, was also distracted at work, suspecting Tateshi was hiding something, and unusually anxious, wondering if he was planning to break up with her. This anxiety also affected Yui. Meanwhile, Tateshi's date planning wasn't going smoothly. His desired restaurants were all fully booked. While he was trying to choose a new restaurant, Yui messaged him to meet the next day. Tateshi, having no time to spare, replied they would meet on Friday instead. He planned to leave work early the next day to pick up the rings, but last-minute work issues delayed him. Fortunately, he made it to the jewelry store before it closed, and the rings were ready. Despite not securing a reservation at the desired restaurant, Tateshi was excited about Yui seeing the rings. Unexpectedly, Yui followed him and confronted him in a questioning tone. She was upset about his secretive behavior, his excuses about studying at home, and his refusal of her dessert invitation under the guise of studying. Yui demanded he show her what he was hiding. Tateshi was torn, revealing the rings now would ruin his planned surprise. Insisting they talk the next day, they ended up arguing in the street. Yui wasn't inherently distrustful of Tateshi, but her anxiety and care resulted from discovering he was keeping secrets. She was particularly worried about the possibility of a breakup on Friday. Hearing her fears, Tateshi could no longer keep the secret and pulled out the rings, explaining they were meant for their anniversary. He wanted to surprise her, but realized the surprise lost its meaning if it caused her distress. Yui was deeply moved and surprised when she opened the box and saw the matching rings, promising to wear hers every day. The surprise turned into guilt as she hadn't expected such a gesture from her boyfriend and hadn't remembered the anniversary herself. Through tears, she told Tateshi, "I love you the most." These words made everything worthwhile for Tateshi. Celebrating their reconciliation, they spent a passionate night together, with Yui still wearing the ring. Afterward, Yui curiously asked about Tateshi's original plans. He explained his intention to find a restaurant with a night view to present the ring, but all were fully booked. For Yui, Just knowing Tateshi's intentions was touching. She had also been quietly remembering the half-year anniversary. Now past midnight on their anniversary, they made a promise in bed to always stay together. However, the next morning at work, Yui's project proposal was rejected, which dismayed her. Seeing the ring on her finger immediately cheered her up, reinforcing her relationship with Tateshi. Their love felt like an endless honeymoon, often caught by colleagues as she frequently admired her ring. Yui shared with them that the ring was an anniversary gift from her boyfriend. With their anniversary behind them, it was soon Christmas, their first together since starting their relationship. Tateshi discussed how they might celebrate, but Yui seemed indifferent, likely due to their busy work schedules. Shizuno, the team leader, was constantly out for work parties, and Yui was also busy. Yet, she still found time to visit Tateshi in the evenings. They talked about the cherry-flavored cookies Yui had submitted for bidding, which had yet to yield results. To distract herself from worry, Yui had taken on too much work, while Tateshi had exams after the new year. As they talked, they playfully teased each other. Shizuno and Somei found themselves getting along better each day, enjoying brief moments together each morning at the coffee shop, which became the happiest time of their day. They even shared the same taste in music. Shizuno even brought Somei a limited edition album from a band back in her hometown. However, Shizuno was concerned about their age difference of 8 years and their hierarchical relationship within the same company, knowing such a relationship should not continue. Today, Shizuno left work early for a rare day without any work-related social gatherings. Walking alone on the streets, she felt the festive Christmas atmosphere and realized it had been years since she last celebrated Christmas. She wondered how Somei spent his Christmas and caught herself thinking about him again. Shizuno quickly stopped herself, remembering past hurts caused by workplace relationships and the potential harm to subordinates in such unequal relationships. She decided to stop visiting that coffee shop and to keep her distance from Somei, which Somei found unusual. This year, the planning and finance departments were to have a joint year-end party since the department heads were classmates. Tateshi was worried about a repeat of previous incidents. Just as Yui assured him it wouldn't happen, a crowd entered the elevator, prompting her to quickly maintain distance from Tateshi. On the day of the party, Tateshi and Yui ended up sitting face-to-face, with Shizuno and Somei sitting close together at the same table. Somei was aware of Tateshi and Yui's situation, making Tateshi the most awkward person there. However, seeing the ring on Yui's finger, Tateshi touched his own ring, feeling secretly pleased. Since everyone at the table had previously attended a baseball game together, they quickly reconnected. Yui and Maria seemed to get along well. Then, a colleague asked if anyone wanted a drink. Shizuno and Somei both initially said ginger ale, but Shizuno quickly changed her order to oolong tea. Somei then struck up a conversation with her, and they appeared very familiar with each other. Suddenly, a colleague from Yui's department wanted to ask a personal question, causing Tateshi and Yui to panic. Fortunately, the colleague was just a big fan of Maria and wanted to discuss her dessert reviews. The first part of the gathering ended soon, and someone suggested continuing at a karaoke bar, which Tateshi and Yui also attended. While the department head was passionately singing, Somei asked Shizuno what song she wanted. After she declined again, Somei chose a song by the band they both liked. Just one song made Shizuno feel overwhelmed, and she stepped outside for air. Unexpectedly, Somei followed her out, sensing she might want to leave, and suggested they leave together, which made Shizuno blush. Back in the karaoke room, things were getting lively. Taking advantage of the distraction, Yui and Tateshi quietly selected a duet to sing together. Fortunately, nobody thought much about it since the atmosphere was so lively. Who would care if they were arch rivals in such a festive setting? After the year-end party came Christmas. It started snowing in the morning, and by evening, a thin layer had accumulated. However, for Tateshi and his fellow office workers, it was just another ordinary day. Unexpectedly, Tateshi ran into Yui during a break, but she was too busy with work to pay much attention to him. Tateshi grabbed a cake and sat beside his girlfriend, learning why she wasn't keen on celebrating Christmas. Her first solo product project had ended in failure, and the company had decided to destroy the remaining stock. Yui had saved some non-expired items from being discarded, seeing it as better than throwing them away. However, Tateshi saw this as a precious metal. Yui explained that seeing shiny, seasonal products in the break room fridge, knowing they were someone else's projects, made it hard for her to enjoy the holiday. But this year was different thanks to Tateshi. Just as they spoke, Yui received a message from her manager saying her proposal for a spring product had been approved, allowing her to develop her second individual product. Tateshi felt happy for her. Meanwhile, Shizuno and Somei accidentally met again at the company. Somei seized the moment to ask why she hadn't been coming to the coffee shop. Shizuno excused herself, claiming she was too busy with work and might not be able to visit anymore. She also reminded Somei to avoid mentioning the coffee shop at work to prevent misconceptions about them meeting alone there. Somei, looking puzzled, asked why that mattered since they often had breakfast alone there. His straightforward attitude only increased Shizuno's guilt. Then Somei mentioned that he liked those moments and encouraged Shizuno not to worry about it. How could Shizuno not care, though? Gathering her courage, she stopped Somei and said she would contact him the next time she visited the shop so he could return the album. Subsequently, they naturally exchanged contact information. Congratulations were in order. Recently, Tateshi and Yui have both been very busy. They haven't had a chance to meet alone for several days, and with Valentine's Day approaching, Yui wanted to give Tateshi some special chocolate. Just then, Minister Chelin asked her to help at the store, and after some persuasion, Yui agreed but requested that Chelin later discuss the spring competition plans with her. Tateshi, meanwhile, has been busy with exams, studying even on the subway. He intended to study at his usual cafe before work, but found it temporarily closed. Searching for another spot, he saw his team leader Shizuno and Somei chatting happily through a shop window. Already feeling guilty, he mistakenly thought they were hiding a scandalous relationship and quickly ducked to avoid being seen. He decided to head straight to the office, pondering their relationship. At lunch, he opened the break room door to find Somei there, which distracted him from studying. Somei struck up a conversation, noting Tateshi's dedication even during lunch, and mentioned how tough the finance department must be. Tateshi explained that the exams weren't mandatory, but could help advance his career. Somei asked if Shizuno, their team leader, had any certifications, leading Tateshi to praise him. Somei, intrigued by this new perspective on Shizuno, confessed he initially thought Shizuno was just a drunkard, but had come to find him quite decent. On the other side, Yui was busy working as a shop assistant, managing both the store and her regular duties along with the competition. It was a tiring yet fulfilling time. Then Maria came to buy desserts and praised Yui's efforts, mentioning that Tateshi, from her department, was also sprinting for his exams. Yui and Tateshi hadn't seen each other in 2 weeks, and it was comforting to hear news about him from others. They were both fully committed to their current responsibilities. Minister Chelin had already revised Yui's competition proposal. However, with the store decked out for Valentine's Day and couples choosing chocolates together, Yui couldn't help feeling envious. One girl even introduced her boyfriend to a colleague, increasing Yui's longing. Exhausted at night and missing Tateshi more than ever, Yui wondered if things would be different if they weren't both so career-oriented. She missed his voice so much that she called him. Luckily, Tateshi hadn't gone to bed yet. Hearing his girlfriend express a desire to be affectionate over the phone nearly overwhelmed him. Meanwhile, Yui began to fantasize about Tateshi touching and kissing her as usual. Realizing what she had said, she got embarrassed and quickly hung up the phone. The next day, Yui finally had a chance to visit the finance department, but she was worried that last night's incident had made things awkward between them. To her surprise, when she opened the door, Tateshi was indeed at his desk, maintaining a strictly professional demeanor. This annoyed Yui, who handed him the documents she needed to deliver. Just then, Shizuno and Maria came to say hello, and Yui had to engage in conversation with them, wishing they could be open about their relationship so Tateshi could join in too. Soon, Tateshi finished with the documents, but when Yui accidentally touched his hand, she quickly withdrew it, relieved that no one else noticed. On her way back, Yui felt down, questioning whether she was suited for a workplace romance. Unexpectedly, Tateshi caught up with her, and once in the elevator, he tightly held her hand, saying he needed to recharge. It turned out that Tateshi had also been feeling frustrated these past few days. They enjoyed a rare moment of solitude in the company, almost like having an affair. Yui couldn't help but confess her longing to see Tateshi. Fortunately, after much effort, Yui's final sample for the spring competition was ready. She immediately had everyone taste it, then rushed to the store to help out, only realizing then that it was Valentine's Day, and she hadn't yet bought chocolate for Tateshi. She was supposed to finish work at 7, but when Yui arrived at the store, it was packed with customers, including Minister Shilan, and it looked like she would have to work overtime. Nevertheless, Yui spiritedly served the customers until closing time. Shilan, grateful for Yui's recent help, had prepared a small gift for her, but Yui didn't have time to accept it as she rushed out to catch the subway. She ended up meeting Tateshi without buying anything. Tateshi didn't mind. He was just happy to see his girlfriend on Valentine's Day. He suggested using her competition sample as a Valentine's gift, proud of having watched her develop it step by step. Tateshi's reaction eased Yui's worries, making her feel that workplace romance was indeed wonderful. Her loved one was close by, understanding all her affairs. Seeing Yui so happy, Tateshi tentatively asked if they should go public with their relationship. Noticing her hesitation, he quickly joked to gloss over the suggestion.